Hi all, welcome to Learning Mathematics, and today we'll be taking you through one very interesting session of Roman numeral versus natural number. Session in this discussion will be understanding what exactly Roman numeral is, and then we'll also learn how to convert from Roman numeral to natural numbers by looking at that number and what are the rules and policies that needs to follow while taking care of that type of conversion. Now, if you understand that Roman numeral, what is the application of Roman numeral? Do you remember in some places where this type of number system has been used? Yes, if you can see our educational system, and then also while writing indexes, and there are other applications also where this type of Roman numeral presentation is used. There are numerous other applications, and we have considered clarification of concept here in this discussion, because if you see most of the videos where this particular topic is discussed, there actually that conversion has been showcased, but how that conversion of Roman to natural is achieved, that is not possible, that is not explained properly, which is the target of this discussion, to clarify or clear the concept, because for us it is not possible to memorize so many representation of natural numbers in Roman format. Rather, if we clear our concept based on certain rules, which is the base, then any number that has been asked us to convert from one format to another will be easily able to achieve that. Isn't it wonderful? Okay, so let us jump on to next slide. Here in this slide, the mapping of particular, this is a fixed mapping, particular Roman numeral to natural number is been given. This is imperative to say that this you have to memorize. Here we have, it is a fixed mapping. I is mapped to 1 in natural number. The same as V is mapped to 5, X is mapped to 10, and 50 has been presented as L, 100 is presented with C, D is mapped to 500, and M is mapped to 1000. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mapping. What about rest of the numbers? How do we achieve that? From this mapping, that is based on 7 rules. So again, we are emphasizing clearing concept on that 7 rules is very much crucial to understand Roman numerals and their respective mapping to natural numbers. So let us jump into that rules. We should not wait any further. These are the first 4 rules, and in next slides we'll be presenting the next 3 rules, and we'll explain each rules using pen and paper because we are more comfortable with pen and paper. So first let us understand what these 4 rules are. The first rule says the numeral 5 can never be repeated. So you cannot repeat no numeral V. So V is represented as 5. So you cannot repeat V if we want to present 20. So 4 V's are 20. No, it cannot be done. How do we write 20? We'll also see to it. So the first rule is numeral V can never be repeated. The second rule is letter I, which is 1, X, which is 10, and C, which is 100, can be repeated up to a maximum of 3 times. So if I need to write 10, we'll write x. If I need to write 20, we'll write x twice, xx. If I need to write 30, we'll write x thrice, xxx. But that is a limit. If we want to write 40, it is not allowed. So how do we represent 40? The 40 will be represented by 50 minus 10. So 30 will be represented as 10 plus 10 plus 10, but 40 will be represented as 50 minus 10. Till now, whatever the rules we have gone through, there is no subtraction. It is only additions. Let us go to the next rule. Let's see what is written out there. The next rule says, rule number 3, when the smaller symbol is placed on the left of the greater symbol, then we have to subtract the smaller one from the greater one. See, here the subtraction is explained. So if you go through the example IV. So V is your 5, I is your 1, and I has been kept on the left of V, which is the left of 5. So 1 is the small one, 5 is the bigger one, and 1 has been written on the left of bigger one. So it will be a subtraction from 5 minus 1, which is I minus I from V. So 5 minus 1 is equal to 4. So any smaller number, if it is written on the left side of bigger number, that denotes that we want to subtract the smaller one from the bigger one. So here we are subtracting 1 from 5 because 1 has been written on the left of bigger one, which is 5, which is V. Fine, then jumping on to the next rule. The next rule says if the smaller symbol is placed on the right of the bigger one, then we consider that as an addition to the bigger one. So here it is written, I is written on the right side of V. So I is 1 and V is 5, and 1 is written on the right side of 5. So it signifies that we need to add both the number 5 and 1. 5 plus 1 is 6. Now you understand that how we can subtract 10 from 50 to achieve 40. Yeah, let us understand that in pen and paper.
So we are back with pen and paper. So we'll be discussing here the first four rules that we have discussed. The first rule says that v cannot be repeated, which is the Roman representation of natural number 5. And this is okay, straightforward, will not represent v in any form of presentation or conversion from natural to numeral. The second rule says that I, x and c cannot be repeated beyond 3 times. So I, x and c, it has to be restricted within 3. So if you want to write 300, we can comfortably write c, c and c, but the moment we need to write 400, we representation of 400 using 4c is not allowed. It will be rather 500 minus 100. And how do we do that? That is explained in our rule number 3. In rule number 3, it is said that any smaller Roman numeral, if it is kept on the left side of a bigger Roman numeral, then it is as good as subtraction from the right one to left. So if it is, let us understand through example. If we represent two Roman numeral in this format, and this is the bigger one which is having value 10, and this is having value 1, so it is as good as 10 minus 1 because the smaller one is kept on the left side. So now if we want to present 500 minus 100, so how do we present that? We will first write 500, which is d, and then to subtract a smaller number from this d is we have to keep it on the left side of d, which is c. So cd means it is 500 minus 100 is equal to 400. The same way, if you want to present 40, we cannot write this because it is beyond our limit of presentation or limit of putting, which is limit of repetition, which is 3. So it is coming as 4, so it is not allowed. It will be 50 minus 10. How do we do that? We'll put the bigger one on the right side and the smaller one which we are supposed to subtract, which is 10, on the left side. So 40 is represented as XL, and 400 is represented as CD. Now what does the number fourth rule says? It says that when the smaller one is on the right side, it is as good as addition. The smaller one, when it is on the left side, it is as good as subtraction as per rule number 3, and rule number 4 says it is as good as addition when the smaller one is kept on the right side of the bigger Roman numeral. So if it is xi, it will be 10 plus 1 because it is on the right side, it is 11. If it is dc, it is equivalent to 500 plus 100, which is equivalent to 600 in normal presentation. If it is lx, it is equivalent to, on the right side, so 50 plus 10 equivalent to 60. So that's how the four rules can be explained using example.
Okay, so let us again start our discussion on the next rules. We have till now understood the four rules. The first rule says v cannot be repeated. The second rule says IXC cannot be repeated more than 3 times. The third rule says if the smaller number is written on the left side of a bigger number, it signifies subtraction. The fourth rule says if the smaller number is written on the right side of the bigger number, then it signifies addition. What does the fifth rule says? The fifth rule says that if a symbol is placed between two number of greater value, so to simplify this rule, it's simply denoting or trying to denote that if a small number is kept between two bigger number, then that small number needs to be subtracted from the bigger number kept on the right side. As simple as that. So if you see, directly jump into the example, if you see XIV, X stands for 10, I stands for 1, V stands for 5, and 10 and 5 is bigger than 1, which has been kept in the middle of both of them, and we have to subtract 1 from 5. It will not be XIV means 10 plus 1 plus 5. It will be XIV means 10 plus 5 minus 1, because 1 has been kept on the middle of 10 and 5 is on the right, so it has to be subtracted from 5, so the value becomes 14. Isn't it wonderful? This is a very important rule. We'll go through these rules using examples, pen and papers. We'll never leave explaining things without pen and paper. Okay, completing the last two rules. The second last is there is no symbol for zero in Roman system of numeration. Understood and well taken. The last one is V, L, and D are not written to the left of the bigger number. So V is 5, L is 50, and D is 500. If you remember from our whole slides where static mapping has been given and that is a fixed mapping. So V is 5, L is 50, and D is 500. It cannot be written on the left of a bigger number. So 5 cannot be written on the left of a 10, which is a bigger number. L is your 50 on the left of a bigger number, which might be your 100, which is your C. So it cannot be LC. It can be CL, but it cannot be LC. So that has been mentioned here. If you see XV, we can write XV, X is 10, V is 5, but VX is not possible. We can write LV because L is your 50 and V is your 5, but VL means V is 5 and L is your 50. So does it mean that it says that 50 minus 5, which is your 45? No, you cannot do that. VLD cannot be written on the left of any bigger number. So how do we write 45 then? We'll understand that also in our presentation or with our pen and paper.
So we are back to discuss the remaining 3 points, which is our 5, 6, and 7 rule number. So let us understand what is rule number 5. The rule number 5 says if we put a smaller number in the middle of two bigger number, it is as good as subtracting that smaller one from the bigger number which is kept on the right. So let us explain that using some example. So this is a smaller number which is 1, this is a bigger number which is 5, and this is a bigger number which is 10. So we have put this smaller number in the middle of two bigger number. So now this smaller number will be subtracted from the bigger number which is at the right. So it will be 10 plus 5 minus 1, which is 14. How do we represent 16 then in Roman? Yes, it will be 10, 5, 1. It is addition, it is not a subtraction. So 10 plus 5 plus 1, it becomes 16. So this is very good way of presenting. Now the 6th point says there is no representation of 0, and the last point says that V, L, and D. So what is VLD? This is 5, and the L stands for 50, and D stands for your 500. It cannot be kept in left of any bigger number. So now think a situation like we need to represent 45. So 45 in Roman we can write 50 minus 5, right? So what is 50 minus 5? 50 is your L and 5 is your V. So if we write it there, because it is mentioned in our second rule, in our third rule, that if we put a smaller number in the left of a bigger number, it is as good as subtraction. So is it a right answer? No, it is a wrong answer. So this cannot be in the left of any bigger number. So then how do we represent 45? Let us see that. So we'll do something like this. 50 minus 10 plus 5. So what is 50 minus 10? 50 is your L. And how do we put minus 10 from 50? If we put a symbol representing 10 on the left of L, it is as good as subtraction of 50 minus 10. So if we write X here, so it stands for 50 minus 10, which is 40. Now how do we add 5 to it? We'll add like directly 5. So this represents your 45, not VL, not 50 minus 5. So this is how we satisfy our point number 5 and 7. Now let us solve some very complex representation or very complex number, natural number into Roman. Will you be able to help me by presenting 4444 into Roman? Let us do that. Will first change, will first represent 4000. So 1000 is represented with M. So we'll write 4M. This is equivalent to our 4000. So 4000 is covered. How do we represent for 400? We can represent 400 by putting C, 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 C. Is this correct? No, this is not correct, because if you remember our point number 2, there we have mentioned C cannot be repeated more than 3 times. So this is wrong. So how do we represent 400? We represent 400 as 500 minus 100. And how do we subtract in Roman? We'll represent 500 by D, and then we'll put the smaller number than 500 on the left side. So 100 is represented by C. It will be CD. That is equivalent to 400. Let us do that. So now the new representation will be MMMM, then 400, right? 400 is CD. Now 40. 40 is same. We have already discussed. 40 will be X and L. L is 50. 50 minus 10 is 40. We will not write 4x because we have already learned in rule number 2 that X and C cannot be repeated, and obviously I cannot be repeated more than 3 times here. If you would represent 40 in X format, then it would have been a repetition of 4 times, which is not allowed as per rules. So yeah, 40 is done. Now what remains? 4. How do we represent 4? The same way. It will be 5 minus 1. So this represents our 4444. Let us pick any other sample number and let us try to represent that. How about 4486? Let us do that. 4486. So 4000 is as good as M, 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 and 400 is C, D, 500 minus 100, and then 86. So 80 is 50. 50 plus 30. So 50 will be your L, and then 30. So 30 we can always present because it is within the limit of our restriction of repetition of beyond 3. So it is within 3. So you can always write. So X, X, X. So 50 plus 3, 30, and then 6. 6 is 5 plus 1. So this represent your 4486. Thus, we can convert, if we are aware of the rules, we can convert any natural number into Roman format and vice versa.